Welcome to Plant Your Seed. I'm your host, Fred Ferris. On each episode, we share stories of how ordinary people have transformed their lives. Each story is compassionate, each story is authentic, and each story is a transformation. Here are the stories of the people who are changing our world by transitioning to a plant-based diet. Today on Plant Your Seed, joining us from Texas, we have Alli Chambers. Alli is the co-founder and president of the Zend Final Farm and Sanctuary. By starting the Zend, she hopes to leave a lasting impact on the animals' lives who are in need of safety. Welcome, Alli.
Hey, thank you.
Thanks for being here on Plant Your Seed.
Thanks for having me.
Can you tell us what it is about animals that made you want to start the Zend Final Farm and Sanctuary?
I've always had such a connection to animals my whole life. I was very fortunate to have parents that allowed me to bring home animals all the time. We'd end up with new kitties pretty regularly, and my parents allowed me to do that. So I always grew up with a house full of animals. They're just my best friends. There's just this connection that's undeniable. And so my whole life, I've always had different animals. We've had cats, dogs, birds, bunnies. They'd let me have all these critters. So it's kind of looking back, it's crazy because it's exactly where we're supposed to be. It just makes sense. I don't think I saw this coming, but now that we're here looking back, it really just makes sense. There's just, no place I'd rather be than with the animals. So it's really awesome that we're able to do that now.
Where did you come up with the name The Zend?
So when we first started this back in 2017, once we realized like this is what we're going to do with the next step of our life and started to get serious about it, you have to come up with a name. You've got to do the name search. And there were a few we went through, and then that all started in November. So it took us like a month and a half because it was New Year's Day, drinking champagne with my mom and my husband. And Justin just out of nowhere said the Zend. And, and as soon as he said it, we all just knew that was it. And then kind of playing around with it, the whole Final Farm and Sanctuary part is just, when the animals come here, this is where they're going to be. And it's where, it's home until the end. So the Zend and the end, and it just stuck.
Nice.
Yeah.
As a small sanctuary that's relatively new, can you tell us some of the challenges that you have faced?
Yeah, I mean, from the beginning, I do have some business owning experience. So kind of, going at it from like we're starting a business. I mean, one of the hardest challenges right off the bat was figuring out how to get our 501c3, how to get it going. I haven't really had any formal training on how to figure these things out, but I've always managed to do it. And it took me about 2 years to figure out, how to come up with a budget for something that didn't exist yet, and waiting and submitting all the paperwork and waiting. And then I remember finally getting the letter that we were approved. And it was just like, I hadn't even told anybody what we were doing yet, because it's like kind of when you've got big plans, I've learned it's kind of best to keep them secret until it's like really happening, And so just getting here, I mean, it's taken us 4 years. We started packing up our house. My husband and I lived in a little house for about 16 years. And we started packing up to move because we were going to buy property and start the sanctuary, right like January of 2020. So we had our whole house in boxes, ready to roll. At the time we had 4 dogs, 4 cats, 2 bunnies, and 3 chickens. So we were ready. And like everybody was trying to get me to get pigs and goats and stuff like that. People are always reaching out to me to save animals even before. And Justin was like, babe, no. He's like, no, you cannot have pigs or goats until we give, you have to have land. And so basically my brain is like, okay, that's the next step then, right? So that was the only thing standing in our way. So we're getting ready to find a farm and sell our house and get going. And then COVID hit. So we actually lived in our house with our box, like our whole house in boxes for over a year.
Wow.
I kept wanting to unpack and put some things back on the walls, but we also didn't want to pack twice. That didn't make sense. So, and then in order to move, at the time we had 14 animals, we couldn't show and sell our house with 14 animals in the house. So we knew we had to move everybody to my mom's, to the house where I grew up. We
Mm-hmm.
built 31 years ago in order, to do that. And she's cool. So she was down with that. And everybody laughs whenever I would tell them our plans because they're like, did your mom have a say in this? And I'm like, well, maybe not so much, but she was down for the adventure. So, that all got postponed. And then of course, not wanting, I didn't hug my mom for a year, making sure to keep her safe because we still had to go to work and be out with, people. And so what was this last spring? Then everything starts to kind of chill out. She's vaccinated. We're all doing our thing. And then now it's actually happening. So we still didn't know where we were going. We had no idea where we were moving. And so we move all the animals to her house. And, COVID kind of hit us hard. So at this point, like looking back at numbers and the budget and like what we can actually do started to kind of get scary. Like there was one day where I just kind of admitted to myself, like, we're not going to be able to do what we've been trying to do for 2 years, like, how are we supposed to do this now?
Mm-hmm.
And, Justin, my husband, he's amazing. He's the one that always kind of pulls me back off the edge, off the ledge.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, jokingly, I'm in my car about to leave for work. And he goes, we'll just, have your mom sell her house and we'll all buy the farm together. And then we'll get a really cool farm. And, I'm near tears at this point, but he just makes me laugh. And I was like, that's not a bad idea. And, pulled myself together and went to work. And no joke, that night I'm driving home from work. I call my mom every night on the way home and we're talking. And I told her what Justin said, I'm like, I go, Mom, the more I think about it, the more it just makes sense. Like, she's my best friend. We lived 15 minutes apart for 16 years and my dad died 11 years ago. So it's like, we're together all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it just was like, why wouldn't you come with us? I don't want to move an hour away from you, and she kind of laughed, and then whatever, a couple of days go by and we're talking on the phone again. And she's like, I haven't been able to quit thinking about what you said. And she's kind of getting in the same boat. Like, the more I think about it, the more it makes sense. But it was hard because we built our house 31 years ago. It's like super special. We always thought, we would pass it down to the nieces and nephews and things like that. And
Mm-hmm.
so that was kind of the bittersweet moment. But when she, decided, like, I'm going to come and I'm going to start the farm with you, it opened up this much larger door now of our options. By joining forces, we were able, to purchase 6.5 acres. And we actually moved back to Justin, Texas, which is where my mom's family, literally, is where she grew up. Her father and uncle owned the furniture store that that's still in town on Main Street now.
Mm-hmm.
My grandmother and her friends started the library, so we're back here. I guess you asked me about challenges. The whole thing has been a challenge, but now that we're here and actually doing the sanctuary, we've been really fortunate. The network of people that we've gotten to know, like the sanctuary networks, once we were here and ready, and I just had to say, we're here and ready, and that's when the calls start coming in and the emails start coming in about these animals that need sanctuary,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just been incredible. But as far as challenges go, there's not been anything that got in front of us and then like came close to stopping us. You just figure out a way to do it. Like I was saying, thankfully we haven't had too many challenges as far as like health issues and, scares and things that are frightening and, those kinds of things. But more than anything, if there is a challenge, we just kind of figure it out, Google and all of our sanctuary friends now that literally within seconds, you can reach out and get an answer or have some support in some way, which is really, really cool. It's an awesome community of people that we all have the same end goal. Challenges, they're there, but it doesn't really stop us too much.
Now, what was going through your head at the time when you actually closed on the property?
Oh, it just gave me like chills. It's so amazing. It's a dream come true. We've been working so hard for 4 years, and to be to be aware and mindful enough to know that we're sitting like right in the middle of our dream coming true, and it's just incredible. It's amazing. I'm so grateful, and uh, I cry daily out of just pure joy,
Hmm.
you know. So it's pretty awesome. It's a very good feeling.
Now, most people want to start a sanctuary, but don't realize the work that's involved. What has surprised you the most about starting and running a sanctuary?
Um, Everyone's, like how I said, kind of keep secret when you've got big plans. But when we did start talking about it, that's the first thing that everybody said was like, "Whoa, that's going to be a lot of work." And
Yeah.
it's funny because it's like we didn't consider that, like we are aware of that, but what I'm finding now is it doesn't feel like work. It is pleasure. Like I can't wait to get up in the morning and put on my outside clothes, to go wake everybody up and
Hmm.
and spend time with everyone. I can't wait to get home after working, a 10-hour shift and put on my outside clothes and go spend the night, go hang out with everybody. So far, and me and Justin, he and I, we're just a great team. We do have some friends too that come out and help, when it's time to build fences and things like that. But he is the best T-post driver I've ever known.
Hmm.
And, when there's hard work, we just put on our boots and go do it. I haven't, there just hasn't been something that's been, so awful or terrible that we can't accomplish what we're trying to do. And we might still be in the honeymoon phase, where
Hmm.
everything is so awesome, but um, we've been fortunate. We do have a wind issue here where we are. So wind has been an interesting, we're learning about tarps and wind and things like that. But
Well, what do you mean by that? I'm curious.
so we have like tarps to, give the animals shade all over the property and their different areas. And we've had to, we go and replace them and duct tape them probably, every 3 days. It's a retarping situation, but we've got a good one on there. We actually got rid of the old one for the pigs where we've got their room. So we're outsmarting the wind, but it's taking us, a couple of months to figure it out.
Did you intern at a sanctuary to find out kind of what you were getting yourself into?
We didn't, and we considered it. What happened was when I first went public, I did once we got our 501(c)(3) approved, and I did a post on Facebook, just kind of letting friends know what we were doing for the first time. And
Hmm.
this guy I grew up with forever ago, he's like, "Hey, one of my friends owns Austin Farm Sanctuary. He's the coolest guy," and tagged him or whatever. And so I get in touch with Chris, who he and Angela, I have not met them, but they are literally, their story is very similar to ours. They're just a couple of years ahead of us.
Hmm.
And I reached out and told him what we were doing. And he literally he's been so kind. And he's, whether he likes it or not, he's basically my mentor,
Uh-huh.
I've told him that, but we've just figured it out. I've had so much experience with animals, and I don't know. I guess I have this confidence that, whatever we need to do, we're going to figure it out and do it. So, and we're doing it. So it's working. But no, I never did intern. It could probably have helped. And I know a lot of the people say, always do it before you start a sanctuary because you don't know what you're getting into, but it's working out. So we're doing all right.
Do you see your sanctuary being specific to a certain type of animal, say, like having mostly goats or sheep or something to that effect?
No, right now we've got a pretty balanced crew out there. We've we haven't really focused on anything in particular, except for when we had Lula. So Lula was our first official farm rescue. I own a business, and one of my clients is a cattle rancher, and he actually, he knew what we were doing, and he texted me on Easter Sunday and said, "Hey, Allie, there's this lamb whose mama didn't want it. Do you want it?" And, at this point, this was last spring, we didn't know where we were going yet. We were still living at my mom's house, in the process of selling our home. But how am I supposed to say no to that? You
Right.
know? And so I said yes. And, Justin and my mom were like, "Oh my gosh, like really?" I'm like, "This is what we're doing. This is the call. Like, this is the first call. Like, how I can't say no. Like, we're a sanctuary."
Uh-huh.
And so I got her. and she was 5 days old and, covered in poop and just skinny, skinny, skinny. He didn't know if she'd received colostrum. He didn't know, he'd just been bottle feeding her a few times a day. And so that's when it starts. You just start figuring it out. And so I was like, what was the question? So when we got her, we had her, she lived on our kitchen table for the first 3 months of her life, spent the majority of her days in my mom's lap being sung to. So she was a house lamb for sure. And then once we, built her a pen in the backyard, she was with the dogs and the chickens and the bunnies all the time. And so when we got to the property, now she has this big, huge field and she's out there all alone. And, every time we go out there, she's always like, can I speak to whoever's in charge? Because, she's like, why am I not in the house with the dogs? She's pretty sure she's either a golden retriever or a Great Pyrenees. I don't know if she's decided which, but, our first focus at that point was we needed to get Lula some friends, and that's when, once again, AFS stepped in. He had, some woman that needed to find better care for her sheep. And so we took him in, and that's what kind of started it all. And then it's just kind of grown from there. Like what's crazy about the sanctuary network is, I mean, we've taken in, I think it's like 20, I don't know. I need to count it out. I think we've taken 20 animals in since we've moved here in September. We're
Wow.
up to 35, I believe. And what's crazy though is how many times I've had to say no.
Right.
Like, yes, we've taken in a lot, but there are so many animals and it's a beat down, because especially right now it's FFA season. So every day we're just bombarded with these precious animals that they've known nothing but love and kindness. And the thought that they're just going to get loaded up and shipped off, is just enough to, just kills me. But so we've kind of become an FFA sanctuary pretty early off the bat without trying. We don't have any animals in particular. No, it's just, whoever comes to us that we can help. And then it's tricky too, because you have to say no. You can't save them all because you don't have the resources. You can't take on more than you can take care of properly. So it's crazy. But right now we've got 10 chickens, 2 bunnies, 4 goats, 3 sheep, and 3 pigs. So we're open,
Right.
to all of them, whoever needs us. So I keep saying that I'm going to pump the brakes and get through, February is going to be the coldest month here. Get through the winter before we start taking in more. But Fred, it's so hard to say
Yeah.
no when you get contacted just, all day long. It's all day. It doesn't stop. So not, we're taking in whoever we can. So I wouldn't be surprised. Like it's going to be hard not to turn into a pig farm though, because these pigs, have stolen my heart. I never knew the relationship that I would have with these pigs it's just incredible. I love them.
Huh. So your favorite animal is pigs.
I mean, I don't know that I could say that. I love them all equally, just differently. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, but no, they're amazing. I mean, literally, just I would spend all day out there with them if I could. Um, they're the best. They're great. So yeah, maybe I'm partial, but
Now, can you take us back to Lulu? How did that feel with your first rescue?
oh, I don't think I slept.
I mean, like, what was the first thing you did? I mean, here somebody hands you this lamb
Right.
that's full of
Mhm.
whatever.
I called my mom and I said, I'm coming home. I've got her. And she's
That's what
like,
you
oh
do,
my
right? You
gosh.
call your
Yeah,
mom. The first thing you
exactly.
do, Mom, help me.
Yeah. Yeah. So she had a, hot bucket of water ready for us, and towels. And so when I got there, we just got her cleaned up. That was step one, get her cleaned up, get her fed, get her warm, and safe. And so the feeling was it's happening, like I just knew that like I said, I couldn't say no. And it it was actually a little more complicated than that, because my client at first, my first instinct was contacted Chris and said, can you guys take her? We're just not there yet. And he said, yes. So then I immediately, I'm like, okay, so now I'm trying to figure out transport. Like, I can drive her down to you, we're going to do this and get her safe. Well, then my client was like, no, I'd rather her go to somebody that I know. And I'm like, wait, what? Like, what are you talking about? Like, this is a sanctuary, like, she'll be safe. And he basically kind of ghosted me. I texted him. I was texting him because 2 days went by. She was 3 days old when he contacted me, and 2 days go by where I'm like, at first I'm thinking I got her a home, and then he says no. And then so I'm like, fine, I'll take her. I'll take her. And I literally, the whole family does cryo at my spa. And so he and one of his sisters, like, we literally ambushed him when he came in to do his session. And I ended up following him home from the spa that afternoon to go get her. So it was tricky, So once I finally did get her, I think relief, because it was 2 days of me like texting him, I can't think about anything but this lamb. Like, you've got to let me have her. And she's precious. She actually would, she plays the wind chime. So she's very musical. But yeah, I think relief probably, and then it turns into, just worry. I mean, she ended up with like a cough, she had an upper respiratory infection, had to give her antibiotics. There would be nights where I'm like, I just didn't sleep. You wake up and get down to be with them first thing in the morning to make sure she's still okay. And I'm getting used to that, though. We joke around here. It's like, I might get a couple, like maybe a 3-day window where everyone is good, like there's not something to worry about. But it's usually a pretty small window, but I try to enjoy it when it happens. But I think that just comes with the territory. I mean, when you've got 35 animals in your care, it's like, there's always something to be concerned with, or maybe not. I probably don't need to be concerned with. Justin, like I said, he's always the one telling me everything's going to be fine, and it usually always is. So,
what are some of your future plans?
I have big plans. I've got big dreams. I've always seen this place, just growing. I would love to. I've got all these ideas. I have my first volunteer orientation tomorrow, which is exciting. It's just one person, but we're to the point now where we could use some outside help. But I want programs. I want to have campouts and education and cooking classes, and us being this FFA farm that we've become. I would love to at least attempt to make an impact with the FFA program, and try to get it to stop. I don't know. These kids get into it because they love animals and they want this hands-on experience. Well, why can't they all just volunteer at sanctuaries? Get the hands-on, but it doesn't have to have the tragic end that the FFA program does have. I have a lot of plans, but us just getting started, I've got to find a team that, I can get people to help me. There's so many things every day where just trying to keep up with the website and the social media and the animals themselves, just everything, fundraising. It's like, fundraising left and right, and finding a team will be great. But I really want to be able to make an impact on our community, and be that source for people where it changes their minds, where they're in a place to make that connection that these animals are amazing and they don't deserve the suffering that humans put on them. It's just, once you start to realize how large a scale it is, it's enough to take your breath away. Like, how do you make an impact on something so large and so just overlooked by people? I mean, it's so just everyday normal for most people to, participate and to use animal products and things like that. And I think, knowing that we can make a difference and knowing that we can help people see what we've seen, if I can do that, I'll feel like I did something worthwhile, but I've got a lot of plans. It's just a matter of getting the ball rolling and getting started. And I think that's one of the things I'm going to have to work on personally is asking for help, knowing what I can ask for help for, and then kind of relinquishing that control and letting people do it without, it's one thing to ask for help, but if you have to go back and do it yourself again, then it really wasn't that helpful.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got to work on trusting people to execute things like I would, and that kind of thing. So hopefully I can get to know and find other people that have the same passion and the same big dreams and aren't afraid of a challenge. So there is definitely a future. I mean, the whole idea would be to create something that, I think a lot of us, like you want to create something that outlives you,
Mm-hmm.
that you can pass on, that, once you're gone, that it's still happening. You know what I mean? Like there's still something that somebody can take over and like, I guess, run with that, run with the torch and continue on. So ideally that's hopefully, 40, 50 years from now, but that would be amazing.
For some of our listeners that might not know, what is FFA?
It's the Future Farmers of America. It's a program in schools. I'm learning about it too. I'm not an expert. I've unfortunately learned more about FFA in the last few months than I would care to, but it's where these kids get they get a baby animal. I think it ranges. I've seen, kids have turkeys, lambs, pigs, but they get these animals when they're babies, and they grow them. They keep them in the FFA barn on campus at the schools, and I'm pretty sure it starts as young as, 8th grade, 7th, 8th grade. So
Mm-hmm.
these kids are, 13 years old, and I do believe most of them get into the program because they love animals. A lot of them, want to become vets or things like that. So they think that this is the best way to get that, hands-on experience. And then they, of course, bond with these animals that they've taken care of and bathed every day and loved. And um, then they're expected to take them to show. So, like for the pigs, they're fed this grower feed where they just get them as big and fat as they can, like they would on any, lot where their, end goal is to slaughter them at 6 months old, which is insane.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but they pump them full of sweller and then they take them to show. And so that's where these kids, I guess they get, prizes based on the weight and how well they show. That determines the price that they'll be able to get when they take them to auction. And then I don't know how. I haven't met any of the kids that don't connect with their animals, because we're taking in the ones from these kids that are freaking out because, once they realize that their friend is going to die, um, they start, their parents, they all start scrambling to find sanctuary, like, what can we do?
Mm-hmm.
So, um, a lot of the kids too, we ask them, are you going to stay in FFA? Have you considered a vegan diet? You try to have these conversations with them. Um, and some of them, I think, get it, they do, but then some of them are like, yeah, I'm going to still do it, but I'm not going to, do pigs or something. And it's kind of heartbreaking, but that's FFA in a nutshell from my perspective, my experience with it. Um, they might have other motivations that I'm unaware of, but just knowing that these babies, it is crazy to know, like, the animals that people eat are literally slaughtered at 6 months old for
Mm-hmm.
the majority. It's the idea that people are literally eating babies is just shocking. And to step back and realize that not everybody realizes that, like, you don't know until you know. I
Right.
went years before I knew, I mean, even though, it's like, it's so weird. I don't even remember. It hasn't even been that long. I mean, we went vegan 4.5 years ago. And from where I am now, I can't even remember what it was like to be so disconnected,
Mm-hmm.
to be so unaware of how our everyday choices, I mean, our lives are just this, made up of all the choices we make, but how seriously our choices that we make every day impact others and the planet. And there's just, the list goes on, but I don't remember not knowing, you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean, which is weird. But then also knowing that the majority of my friends and the people that I'm with, they don't know, you
Right.
know. And it's just this weird kind of bubble to be in.
It's like the Matrix.
It is. It's a bubble. It's kind of isolating at times because I can't help but want to talk about it all the time. Like anytime I talk to anyone, I'm talking about food or, all the amazing food we cook or the animals. And it's like, you know, I guess just you don't want to be a preachy vegan, but I kind of, I don't think you can help it. It's like having the answers and wanting to help, but it's wild because not everybody's ready. I mean, I think everybody has their own timing. I mean, everybody does because I did. Like I said, we weren't born vegan. It's something that you actually we pretty much sought it out ourselves. It's I don't know. It's just one of those things though where once you know, you can't unknow it. And once we knew, it completely changed our lives.
Let's get into your vegan journey.
Okay.
How and when did you transition to a plant-based diet?
So it's been a long journey for me personally. I went vegetarian when I was 20. I was kind of a naughty teenager, so I had a rough, there was like 6 years there where it was pretty touch and go. I was wild, and so I kind of hit my personal. I call it rock bottom because it was just a bad place to be. I was 20 and didn't know what I was going to do with my life and what I wanted. I didn't know what my morals were. I was all over the place. And what I did know was that I couldn't control what was going on in the world around me, but I could control myself. And so I was taking psychology courses. I have a psychology degree, and it was while taking those courses that I kind of had this revelation. And so I grew up in a family where, our whole life was kind of just revolved around food, and didn't matter if we were celebrating or mourning or whatever. It was just food, my dad was a really big guy. I watched my mom yo-yo diet her whole life, and it was at this point where I was ready to kind of change my life and basically start becoming who I am now. But I decided to go vegetarian because back then, like 20 years ago, vegan was so far off the radar. I had one experience with a vegan. My brother brought a girlfriend home from college, and I mean, we didn't get it. Nobody got it. But she, my mom was kind of panicking, like, what do I feed her? And my dad was joking about, letting her go graze in the backyard. And I remember being shocked that she couldn't even eat the ranch flavored wheat thins, which, like, they're wheat thins. Why can't you eat those? But of course, there's milk in them because there's milk in everything, and you don't realize that until you realize that. And so that kind of started it. So I was a vegetarian for years and years. And I actually said, for at least 15 years, I was the person that said I would never be vegan because life wasn't worth living without cheese. And I really believed that. Like I did. But I also had no idea about the dairy industry. And that's what's weird. Like, how did I not know? Right? Like, how do you not know? But somehow we don't until we do. And so 4.5 years ago, and my husband was never a vegetarian. He was always, eating meat or whatever. He was one of the, grew up thinking like a meal isn't a meal if you don't have meat. Like you have your meat and then you build your meal around that. So he was always like, I guess, supportive. But I mean, I still ate cheese and eggs and fish for the most part. So he's been for years really like an environmentalist too, like really into, we've got the solar panels in our electric cars and we recycle like crazy, like doing everything we can to save the planet. And I'm pretty sure I had a memory pop up on Facebook, and because we've talked about this recently, like what made us sit down and watch the documentaries that we did, because that's literally what changed our lives in an afternoon. And come to find out, I just saw this memory pop up that one of my girlfriends at a pool party had told me about Earthlings. And like, I don't remember how we got there, but one afternoon, Justin was, we were like, okay, let's watch these documentaries. What the Health had just come out on Netflix. And so we watched What the Health first, which was a really well done documentary as far as like the health aspects, like, and here we are, like my whole family, my just unhealthy, my dad died from a massive heart attack at 61. And then one of my brothers died at 34 from a blood clot. And like I, mentioned my mom dieting all the time. And so that really kind of hit home because I'm always, trying to tell my mom like all these things that she should do to be healthier.
Hmm.
And so we watched What the Health and then we watched Earthlings. And I ugly cried, like hyperventilating cried for the solid hour and 40 minutes that is Earthlings.
Hmm.
And when it was over, Justin looks at me, he goes, "That's it." He's like, "I'm done." And I'm kind of ashamed to admit this, but my initial reaction was, "But what about cheese?" Like but here I am, like I knew he was right. And of course, I'm not gonna let him do it without me. So, it took me all of 5 seconds to get over my cheese fear. But he was like, "Babe, like you just watch that with me." He's like, "I'm done." And I'm like, "Okay, let's do this." And it took us a while. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, we were chips and queso at least once a week and sushi once a week.
Hmm.
So I think those were the hardest. But then again, you watch Seaspiracy and that, it just solidifies that decision really quickly too. Just knowing what we're doing to the planet and the oceans and, and the animals. I mean, we went vegan for all the reasons. It's not whenever I talk about it, it's like I could sit there and talk about the animals all day long, but then if once we're done with that, like I can immediately move over to the environment and talk about that all day long too. And then, then we can talk about, health. Like it's kind of never ending. And it's this, even if you can't convince someone that it makes sense from one aspect, there's always two others right
Right.
there, for backup. It's like, what's important to you? You're like your health. Do you want your kids to grow up where there's still an ocean? Like, do you, like what's important to you? And anytime you can find a reason why going vegan is the best choice. I say it all the time, but it is absolutely my favorite choice that we've ever made as a team. And I know I'm fortunate to have a husband to do it with, to have that support, because I can't imagine having the convictions that I have now. I can't imagine being with someone who didn't share those because it's so core belief, it's like it's so part of who we are that I just couldn't see it any other way. And I also love the fact that my mom's vegan now too. So we got her, and that's something that having her support too is incredible. I do a lot of cooking, so I feed everybody. So she's down for whatever I'm making, and she always loves it. So she's doing good too. So it's been a long time coming, but what's crazy, like looking back on it, it makes perfect sense. I
Hmm.
I think the crazy thing is that it took us so long because I was right there for so long. I was just so addicted to cheese, like physically and mentally, addicted because it is addictive.
Cheese has the protein casein, which breaks down in your body to casomorphines, which attach to dopamine receptors in your brain and trigger cravings for more of the similar foods. So it is just like a drug because of the way it is produced.
It really is. It really is. So once we got that out of our systems, there's no looking back. Now it's like I'm good. It's not even a thing. Just it's just like now it's just every time people, I don't know, it's just now you just want to make everybody else stop, which everybody's like stay in your lane or whatever, and it's like oh my gosh, but like you just have to see it from where we're seeing it, and then it just clicks and it makes perfect sense, and you'll never look back. But what do you do?
What did you learn from that struggle with cheese and how did you overcome it?
I learned that it's ridiculous. That I mean, I don't know. I think it's more than anything just realizing the suffering that goes into that. Like for us to take, sensory pleasure to me now will never be more important than the lives of the animals that are harmed because I wanted some cheese. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? Like, um, honestly, when you do it for the right reasons, the struggle went away. It was just that initial, you know, I think too, like just habits, it's so habitual, I think any kind of addiction, the habit part of it is what makes everything so hard to stop something. But um, honestly, with all the alternatives that they have now, and fortunately, we both love to cook, so we spend a lot of time in the kitchen, and people are so inventive, like innovative and brilliant. How you can literally cook. I can make anything
Mm-hmm.
vegan, and it's amazing. I think that's one of my favorite things that I love is finding a, relatively traditional recipe or something and veganizing it. And it's like, you feel like a superhero, you know? Like, it's like, I love feeding people and I sit there and like watch them eat the food I made, like, and they're like, oh my God, it's so good. And like one of my best friends, my partner in my business, she always says like, oh, if you cook for me all the time, I'd totally be vegan, and I'm just like, oh, I wish I could cook for the world. I really do. Like, I wish I could feed everybody because it's amazing and delicious, but it's just better, like knowing that nobody had to die for us to have an amazing meal is a really good feeling, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It is. It is a good feeling.
Do you struggle with talking to your friends about being vegan?
I'm a talker and they all know that. I think anybody that is my true friend knows that I'm never quiet about stuff. I've never been different. I've always been this way. But yeah, I mean it is a struggle because you don't want to push people away. You don't want to make people feel like, oh, I don't want to, like 'cause it's all I talk about. And it is. Honestly, Fred, it's all I talk about now. And I'm I'm not sorry.
Mm-hmm.
um, but it is because you don't want it to be like the topic of every conversation. It seems like now when I go to parties or we get to, they're kind of few and far between with COVID, but like we'll get together and I swear I end up talking about veganism the whole time. And a lot of the times though, I'm like, it's not me starting it. You
Right.
know, it's they ask questions or because we always bring food, any kind of gathering, I always make extra and bring extra food. And I love feeding people, like I mentioned. And so we start talking about it. And then of course, like if you start talking about veganism, I mean, there's so many different ways to take that. And so it ends up, and I don't want people to think that that's like all I have to offer anymore. But I mean, this is what we're doing. And it's my life has always been fueled by my passions and animals and veganism are definitely a passion of mine now. But I try not to be annoying. I try to be supportive. I try to be more, it's like you don't want to make them feel like I feel like people always say like you're judging them or whatever, but it's not. I try more than anything just to educate
Right.
because I think, like I said, once you know, you can't unknow. But if, you know, the people that are like, well, I don't want to know. Don't tell me I don't want to know. I'm just like, that's not fair though. Like if you're gonna eat steak and be cool with that, you should you should know how it got there and you should know the price and the cost of everything that's impacted by that. You know what I mean? Like the
Mm-hmm.
environment, the our water, like there's the fact that we could feed all the homeless people in the world with the freaking grain that we feed cows so that people can have hamburgers is crazy,
Yeah.
you know? So it's like rather than being thinking, that we're judging it or being judgy, it's like I just try to educate, but I feel like if you know what happens and what goes into that and you're still okay with it, what more can I do? I can't imagine that someone that really opened their mind and their heart to the reality and the truth of what happens, I don't see how they could still enjoy that, or think that they enjoy it. But yeah, it is a struggle and it's isolating, nobody like nobody wants to invite us out to eat because it's like, what are you gonna eat? But I've been known to take my vegan parmesan in my purse to a restaurant. I'm not above that at all. But yeah, it is a struggle. But I try to do it gently, but also, what's really awesome is I would say not once a week, but maybe once every 2 weeks or so, definitely once a month, I get a message, from a friend. Hey, you know, trying to go plant-based, or, we're trying to go vegan for the month, whatever. And I
Hmm.
am there, talk about plant your seed. It's like, you never know when people are actually listening, and everybody has their own timing. So all you can do is do you. And then, when it's the time for someone, they reach out. And that is my favorite thing. I'm literally like, are you ready? Because I'm about to blow you up. I've got all the recipes and all the links and all the groups I follow and I've got a whole album of the pictures of the food we eat, the
Hmm.
substitutes for people that are just starting to kind of realize, like, you can basically, it's not about, I think so many people are terrified because they think they're going to be giving things up. They're going to be missing out on stuff, but what they don't realize is it's an upgrade. It's just
Mm.
literally like just upgrading the product to something just, made from plants. Like, why is that so scary to some people? They're like,
Yeah.
oh, it's vegan. That's weird, and it's like, they're like, what's in that? I'm like, plants, you
Yeah.
know,
What's
like
in
I
your
don't,
burger?
oh, right. And like, I mean, come on, people eat hot dogs. I'm sorry, but I'm also that friend. And all my friends know, if you feed your kids hot dogs and I'm around, they're going to know what's in that hot dog. and
It's not
and
dog.
it's just, yeah, it's my fun party trick. So, um, you know, what's cool though, I guess on the reverse side of the whole struggle thing with friends, we've actually been really, really fortunate too, because we have awesome friends that see us, they understand us, they might not be doing it with us, but they're super supportive. Like, to a cookout, and my buddy, Sergio, he's like, I got you Beyond Burgers, I got you brats and stuff. And he cleans off the area on the grill, like, they get it, and they
Right.
support us in that. And it's so, I mean, there's the struggle for sure, but there's also, you know, our friends that are very supportive and they love what we're doing, and they see us, Um, so that's really cool too. It kind of, I guess it's a nice balance there, so
Do you think it's best to lead by example or to use education as the best way to change people's minds?
I mean, I think it's both, and
Hmm.
I can't help but do both. And I guess too, it's the audience. Like, who are you talking to? Like, what's gonna be what connects with them? Kind of knowing what's important to them and maybe taking that angle, that approach to help them see, where you're coming from. Leading by example is great, but that's only if people are paying attention, and
But you never know if people are paying attention.
right, right. So absolutely, like, lead by example 100%. And I think, we're doing what we're doing. And I mean, like, literally, every day is a pleasure. I am so happy to be alive and doing what we're doing. And I think when people see how happy we are and what we're doing, and, we're healthier than we've ever been. We just did blood work recently, and we're healthier than we were 15 years ago, and we just turned 40 this last year. And it's just, so definitely leading by example, is important. But then again, that without the education, or, when people are ready for the conversation, and
Mm.
we, I think then at that point, that's where, just dropping some stats, and just like, not too harshly, but because it can get dirty pretty quick when you actually start talking about the reality of animal agriculture. I mean, it's
Right.
not pretty. So I think it's a little bit of everything. But what also I've thought about a lot too, trying to understand, like I mentioned before, like, I don't remember being on the other side. I don't remember, what it felt like. And here we are, we're dinks, so we're dual income, no kids, on purpose.
Hmm.
And we chose travel over children. And now it's animals over travel. So there's that. But I think, you know, we're also in a position of, and I don't know if I would call it like luxury, but like, how many people don't even have the luxury to stop and think about what their choices impact and who their choices impact? A lot of people are just trying to keep their head above water every day, you
Mm,
know, raising families and holding, I mean, life is wild and life is crazy, especially now. Like nobody sleeps, like the world doesn't sleep. It's, you know, owning a business in a sanctuary. It's like, I mean, like I'm never off, like
right.
ever. I'm like, maybe while I'm sleeping, but, I don't know that veganism is like a lifestyle of affluence, but in a sense, like, if you're just trying to get through the day, do you really have time to stop and have these like existential moments where you realize, like how your choices affect the world and all that? And um, I think a lot of the times, I guess that's where I'm like, I'm over here with all this time on my hands and I'm, you know, relatively, well, not relatively lucky, super lucky to be in the position to question, my choices and be aware of my impact in the world. Um, so I think of that too, but I'm at the same time, once again, I don't think anybody is in a position to not do their best, like in that all we can do. It's like I love Maya Angelou's quote is one of my favorites. It's do your best until you know better. And then once you know better, do better.
Hmm.
And I think, that's something that I inadvertently, like it turns out like I've kind of tried to live my life like that, because every time we've learned something that we could do something better, we do it,
Mm.
and we change and we adapt and we've done it. So I don't know if everybody's in a position to really step back and consider, how much everything that they do affects everything else, which I don't know. I wish everybody had the opportunity to be able to. That's why I said luxury. It's almost like, if I was struggling just to pay the bills and miserable in my life, am I really going to stop and take the time to worry about the environment or the animals I'm eating? So I think a lot of times there, it's what kind of people are even like accessible to the thoughts. You know what I mean? Like where those
Hmm.
thoughts are even an option. So I don't know. I wish there was something we could do to make that not the way it is. But a lot of the times I think maybe that's what stops a lot of people, just not having the luxury of being able to stop and consider what they do.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's got a busy life. Veganism is actually less expensive if you do it, I guess,
Like
the
Whole Foods.
proper way,
Yeah. Right. Of course. And I
as
I
opposed
know
to
that. And
processed foods.
right. I guess the whole just getting there, but and a lot of people, they don't realize how much stuff like is vegan.
Peanut butter.
Yeah,
I had a friend the other day who was like, "Hey, if I went vegan, what would I eat?" And I said, "I don't know, peanut butter and jelly sandwich."
yeah, one of my faves. But yeah, it's something else, it's like I said, it's completely changed our lives. It's so quickly become so value and, being able to, I guess, like be, I don't know, it's be like so true to your heart, like knowing that everything we do is true to everything we say and feel, that's a really it's a good feeling. It's not like pat yourself on the back good, but just peaceful.
What positive changes did you see both physically and mentally? You mentioned your blood work being better than you were earlier
Right.
in your life. Was there anything else that you've noticed?
Absolutely. So I struggled with depression and anxiety as a teenager. Um, that was part of my whole, revelation when I was 20 was figuring that out, and my psychology degree helped.
Hmm.
What I've noticed, and my anxiety is, 99% gone. And except for when I'm worrying about an animal or something like that. But that's normal, right? We've got to worry about some things. That's normal. But I used to have this like crippling anxiety where I just always thought I was dying. And I don't, I think that was kind of came with the territory of my dad and my brother dying suddenly, 2 years apart. So that affected me to where I kind of, I internalized a lot of the grief. So it kind of manifested itself in anxiety that I thought I was always dying. And that is completely gone. And I've said over the years, you think about it when you eat animals or animal products, and, I'm of the belief that, we're all energy, we're all frequencies,
Hmm.
we're vibing, through this place. And, so when you eat animals, you're literally eating sadness and terror. I mean, think of the last moments of these animals' lives while they're, before and while they're being slaughtered. They watch their friends, they watch, smell, and hear their friends and family, being murdered before them. And there's no question. I mean, you cannot, nobody could think for a second, that these animals aren't terrified when they're in a slaughterhouse. I mean,
Right.
you know, if you didn't realize that, you're like, I don't understand how anybody could fool themselves, thinking otherwise. But like, these animals are terrified, and then you eat it. And how does that energy not transfer to your cells, on a cellular level? Like,
Right.
you're literally eating terror and torture. And like, so for me, I'm like, saying that, I know for a fact it's affected me. My anxiety, I don't have it. It doesn't exist anymore. It's a non thing. It's amazing. And people all the time are like, "Oh, your skin, is so pretty," and I'm like, "Oh, thanks," and um, things like that. But so for me, that the anxiety thing is huge. Um, my husband Justin, he used to have acid reflux and heartburn. Doesn't have it at all anymore. It's gone. So definitely, and you're just lighter. Like, I love it eating vegan and plant-based. It's like, for example, when you do the dishes, I'm sure you've noticed this. Like, you don't have to soak anything. Back in the day, like, you make a casserole or something, you have to soak the dish for overnight, with soapy water so that you
Hmm.
can even clean the dish before you put it in the dishwasher, right? Now it's like you barely have to run the water over the dishes because there's not all this grease and gunk and disgusting, it's just not gross. And so the same thing is like the inside of our bodies. Like, we're so clean and so light, and you just feel lighter. I love we grub. I mean, we grub down like Thanksgiving. Oh my gosh. Like, the best, right? I feel amazing afterwards.
Right.
Like, we don't have to go lay on the couch and unbutton our pants, because we just ate all this sadness. It's like we're ready to go outside and go, go do something. Like, it's just it's very liberating, like, I feel good. I've definitely noticed. I mean, 100%. It's changed our lives. It's made everything so much better. I think a lot of us say it, like, the one thing I regret is not having done it sooner. Like,
Right.
what took so long? But that goes right back to that timing. Everybody's got their timing, and it's just you're like, dude, if only I had known, I'd have done it sooner. But here we are now, so at least there's that.
What is one habit, hack, or tip that helps you stay on track with your plant based diet?
Definitely cooking. I cook all the time. So whenever I'm off from my normal job, I always make a big pot of soup. So we've always got a pot of soup that lasts at least 2 or 3 days. Um, and just making sure, I mean, we go to the store all the time, but just making sure we have food like ready to go, because we're busy. We're both going, we take our food to work all the time. So I double recipes all the time. So there's plenty for leftovers. So I'm not cooking every day necessarily. And then I just, you know, having the community of just online, of different vegans and different vegan groups. Veggie Society, there's this woman, her website is amazing. Like, her recipes are incredible. I think for us, it's just me cooking all the time. And I'm glad I enjoy it because we're in the kitchen a lot. But that to me is kind of the hack. Like, I always have food with me. Like, no matter where we're going, we plan ahead. I'm sure we all check the menu before we go to any restaurant to know exactly, like, we get to what we're going, we know exactly what we're going to order because we've looked. I think
Hmm.
it's being prepared. Like, I don't ever put myself in a situation where I'm going to be so hungry that I would like actually not be a vegan, which, like, now that just kind of sounds crazy because it's not even an option. But I think it's just planning, eating before we go somewhere, or just always taking stuff, that kind of stuff. I think that's the hack, just being prepared.
Is there a documentary, you mentioned Earthlings and What the Health, that you
Mhm.
show somebody or tell somebody about if they're transitioning to a plant-based diet?
It's those every time. That, and now that Seaspiracy came out, because I think a lot of people too, and I was the same way, still enjoying and loving seafood and thinking that, oh, it's fine, because it's not, it's not meat or whatever when but definitely What the Health, Earthlings, Game Changers was a really good one.
Mm,
Um, they're all, it's like we've watched them all. Dominion, The Flood, I mean, it's just, what's crazy though, some people just refuse to watch, you know,
right. They're
and you
just not
can't.
ready.
Right. And it's like, as much as I'd love to, strap them down and tape their eyes open, you just can't do that. But yeah, What the Health and Earthlings for sure. Um, I mean, they did the trick for us. So I feel like if something's going to, and because they both are, coming from completely different aspects of veganism, the health version, and then Earthlings kind of, is the whole speciesism thing, which, it's once you realize what we're doing, it's just not okay. Like
Right.
how could you be a part of that? Like I I don't ever want to be a part of it again, like I don't know. There's just this planet and life is just way too precious to be a part of the problem.
Now, finally, can you give me one word to describe how you felt before you became vegan and one word to describe how you feel now that you are vegan?
Yeah. I think my pre-word is resistant. I was a resistant vegan. I resisted it for years, thinking that what I was doing was enough. So resistant would be my first word. And then now I think it would have to be like connected, realizing how connected our choices are to the rest of the world and everybody and everything. It's like that's that's real, And once you
Mm.
know that, it's kind of it makes it a lot easier to do what we're doing. So I would say resistant and then connected.
It's such a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much for taking the time. What is the best way for people to follow you on Instagram, the web, and social media?
So the sanctuary is the Zend TX everywhere: Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Our website is www.thezendtx.org. So it's pretty straightforward. It's the Zend TX. You can find us pretty much everywhere.
All right. Thank you so much, Allie, for being on Plant Your Seed.
Thank you, Fred. I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Hope you are inspired by this story, and remember, it's never too late to plant your seed. Links to everything we talked about on the podcast can be found on Instagram at plant.yourseed in the show notes tab in the bio. If you enjoyed the show, remember to leave us a review, and until next time, thank you for listening.